Hello and welcome to the multi-site PMO delivery and governance spreadsheet. This one is one that I've made a few of these kinds of spreadsheets over the years, and I've decided just to make a generic one now, but one that combines multi-sites as well as different kinds of tasks that you're essentially tracking. So let me go through this one. What I normally do in this case is I normally start with the settings, but this case the settings look a little bit confusing. So I'm going to start with the different sheets that you enter, where you enter the data, and then when I get to the point where the settings are relevant, I'll pop over and show you what the settings do. So you've essentially got these three red tabs that we're going to be working with to start. These are the three. You've got the project plan where you've got all the different tasks that you enter. You've got the meeting actions where you've got all the different tasks that you enter. And you've obviously got the raid sheet where you put in all of the risks and issues that you face, and what have you. This is a different layout and a different format. I'll get to that one. These two are very, very similar. The only difference is here you fill in the site, the department, and the strategic pillar, whereas here you just fill in the department. But the rest of it is the same. So let me go through this one. Um, we want to select the site, the department, and the strategic pillar. Now, before we get into that, there is a setup page for this in location. So I'm going to show you how that works. You can actually set up your locations. And I've put in here 2,500 rows. So you can go nuts with things here. So the idea here is to set up the region first, the site, then the department, and then the strategic pillar. So the region, you're probably going to have fewer regions than you're going to have sites per region. In fact, the spreadsheet only allows the spreadsheet only allows you to have that site in one region. So when I say region, it doesn't necessarily need to be an area, but for example, you may have, if it's a medical thing, you may have trusts, and in the site you may have hospitals or buildings, or you may have different businesses or whatever the case might be as a region, and then different buildings within each business, or however it works. You need to decide how to break this down. But the region is the kind of the widest category. So you're probably going to have fewer of these, and you're going to have the different sites within that. So if you did put, for example, site D in region B and site D in region A, it's going to flag up to go, you can't have the same site in two different regions. Other than that, you can then have the same departments across different sites if you want to, and then the same strategic pillars. So if, for example, you have 10 strategic pillars in in region A, then you'll put region A 10 times, so the 10 different strategic pillars in the department. So you may have the same pillar in two or three different departments, so you'll list it however many times you need. So you need to list, this might be a bit of a job at the beginning to set all of this up, but once you've got it set up, it means that you've then got a list of all of these regions, site, department, strategic pillars ready in your drop-down list. You can sort by any one of these. You can sort by region, by site, by department, or the pillar, and it will then obviously sort this accordingly. And then you're able to get started. So you can set this up first and foremost so that you've got these different items. Not only does it check for the complete thing to make sure that all what you've selected is a legitimate entry. So, for example, if you don't have a pillar 4 in region A, or you don't have a pillar 4 at site B, then you won't, if you select it later on as that, it won't allow it. So not only does it check that, but it also gives you the individual drop downs as well. So when you go to the project plan, and it's asking you for the site, it gives you all the available sites. It gives you all the available departments, and it gives you all the available pillars. So if I put in the site and the department and the pillar, that's not acceptable because there isn't a pillar 2. Now, I'm guessing what I've put in here because I can't actually remember what I've put in here. Um, I know what it is. Site B. There we go. Now I've got a legitimate one. You would hopefully know which sites you've got and which departments you've got and which strategic pillars you've got. And if you do put something in that's valid and it comes up red, it means you don't actually have it, so you can go and add it. So that shouldn't be a problem because you should know what you would probably like me know what you're filling in. I'm guessing because I can't actually remember what I filled in. And then you've got your improvement action plan. So this is where you type the short description. You can type something longer. And if you want to drop down a line, sorry, press, I think it's Alt and Enter. Yeah, Alt and Enter. And then you can drop down another line. So it will expand for you in order to do that. But if you put in the action plan, let me just clear this and go blah, blah, blah. So you put in the action plan, then you select the person. So now you've got a list of staff who are responsible and you put the lead owner in. Now the staff you can just add over here. And all you literally do is just add the staff name and sort alphabetically. This I'll explain when we get there. So you can just add new names on here. There's space for up to 1,000 staff. Donuts. You can put the staff names in here and then you can select them in that drop-down list, the lead owner. And then you can put in today's date. I've put a drop-down list of the previous few days because you may have done this yesterday or the day before, but you can select today's date, which is top of the list. This is just when you're adding the task in. And then what the spreadsheet does then is if you get to that point and stop, the spreadsheet then goes, okay, today's date. It then counts down a certain number of days before it goes, okay, the change is this on track to overdue. Because you can't just say, we don't want to have something on track the whole time. And you want to be able to start date into start date, but we want the status to change if this isn't touched over a while. So the default number of days it allows, if you click on the settings tab, this right-hand section here is that how many working days between the listed date and the due date, and how many working dates between action dates. I'll explain what that is. But this is the project plan settings. These are the meeting actions. And these are the rates. So you can adjust how many working days those periods are here. So what this does is because I've adjusted this one to 30 days between listed and due, what that one does then is this date will be valid for 30 days. And after 30 days, this will change to overdue. So within that 30 days, I need to either start that project or if you know, well, hold on, this particular task, we're only going to do in 6 months' time or whatever, we're adding it in now, then just put in an expected due date. As soon as you put an expected due date, what that does, that expected date, is it overrides anything that the spreadsheet's automatically calculating and it waits for that date before it starts to change tasks, before it starts to change statuses. So you can put this in to kind of set the expected date at any stage. This one you click when you started and it changes it goes from not started because this hasn't been ticked yet to on track because it has started. Then it waits for the date that you put in and then the status will change. If there's no date, it tracks the number of days since the task was added, as we said from the settings. If any task gets put on hold, you simply select today's date and on hold and it grays it out and it doesn't tell you anything to do with that task. It just basically sits there. It doesn't do anything until it becomes active again, in which case you just clear that and then it'll spring back into action. So when you clear that, it might, if it's been on hold for months, these things might flag up and tell you that it's overdue and all the rest of it. You may have to adjust the new expected date and that type of thing. But putting it on hold while it's on hold will just blank it out, gray it out. And then these two columns here, the last action and the action notes. Each time you take a new action on this task, you select today's date and update the date and select last action and type in very short notes of what that last action was and just override anything. So if you do an action on Monday, put the Monday's date, task, what it was that you did. And then if you did a new action on Wednesday, for example, then override the previous one. So this just keeps track of the last task that was done and the date at which it was done. So if you have something, for example, that's due in 6 months' time and you've done a task and it's been a while since you've done another action, then what it'll do is when it goes 10 days between actions, then what will happen is the status will change to no action with a pink one. Status will change to no action. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe that's what you expect. Maybe that's the nature of the beast. It's not a problem, but it just tells you that you haven't actually taken an action for a while on each particular task. So you can update the actions, the expected date. And then finally, when the task is complete, just select the date that was complete. And as soon as you do that, it greens it all out. And now that task is complete and it's done and dusted. And that's the end of that. You can put in some further notes here if you want to. This doesn't do anything on the spreadsheet, but you can put them in if you want to add some further notes to the project. So that's a list of your tasks in the project plan. The meeting actions is almost identical. The only difference is you're only selecting a department and you selecting an action number. Now, the action number, when you do another one, it'll give you the next number in sequence. If you don't want to start on one and you want to start on action number 300 or whatever, you can go to your settings and you can put in there last action number used. So if you put 299 in there when you start in the spreadsheet, the next action plan number will be 300, 301, 302, etc. Otherwise, you can just start at one and it'll take the next number in sequence. Here you can see there's one of these no actions that we did on the previous one because there's still plenty of time for this to be done by November, but we haven't done an action and it's been over 10 days. So it just changes to no action. So these two are very similar. The rest of the rest of the columns are all the same. It's just these first few that differ between the project plan and the meeting actions. If you want to clear out the old ones, you can come and sort by the completed date to bring all the completed ones together, select all that data under the red headers, clear it, and then resort by task added to bring them all back in line again. Then you can clear out all the old ones if you find you're running out of space. I've left you 5,000 rows. If you start to run out of space, you probably will have to clear some of the old ones, both on the project plan and the meeting actions. The RAID, similar concept, but there's obviously more to it here. So you select the type, and the type, there are only two drop-down options. There's a risk or an issue. You can select which one it is. And then it's active or closed. Active means that it obviously is ongoing. Closed, it grays out the whole thing as we did with the other one when it was on hold. Then this one, you just select the strategic pillar. You put in the description and then the date identified again, probably today's date or whichever date if your date that you want isn't in this drop down, let's just simply type in the date that will accept it. That's fine. And then the last review. Now, the spreadsheet. Well, let me come back to this. The owner, as before, you select the owner from the staff list. That's the time. That's fine. The review will flag up for a new review depending on the risk. And the risk is calculated by the initial likelihood and consequence, and then the mitigated likelihood and consequence. So let me finish these rows, and then I can show you how that is all calculated. Here you've got the initial likelihood, which is a drop-down list of 5 options, and then you've got the initial consequences, which is a drop-down list of 5 options. Then you've got your mitigation text that you can type in here. And then you've got your mitigation likelihood and consequence, which should obviously be lower than the initial. And then you've got some comments. If you want to put some comments in, that's fine. You can put some comments. You don't have to put comments at the end. But those options in the drop-down are still all in the settings tab. And this is where the settings tab gets a bit confusing. This is this middle section over here. So you can actually input the 5 names of the likelihoods. This one being the most certain one, and this one being the least certain one. You can see by the colors. I'll leave this text in that I've got, but you can override these if you want to call them something different. So here are the 5 different likelihoods. Here are the 5 different consequences. Here are the 4 different risks: low, moderate, high, extreme. And this tells you how many months you have to do a review depending on the risk. So if it's low risk, we're doing it every 3 months, moderate every 3 months, high every 1 month, extreme every 1 month. You can put whatever you want into here. Just put whole months in and it'll work it out. It also asks you which of these options actually affect the filter. So is it the initial or is it the mitigator? Which one of them affects the renewal date filter? So the renewal dates, which one of these affects the renewal dates, and also it'll affect the filter. I'll share what the filter is later on. So you need to select whether you want the initial or the mitigated. Some cases, businesses want to use the initial one, some want to use the mitigated one. You can then decide which one of those you want to use, select it, and that will then be used not only to determine the renewal dates, but also to determine when you use the filter later on, which ones are filtered. But then you also need to fill in this table over here. So if this were cleared, what you would have here is you'd actually have a situation where if it's negligible and certain, what is the risk outcome? And it'll give you the risks that you've put in there. So as you can see, I put in moderate, low, etc. You can select each of these: negligible, certain, likely, minor, mild, likely, negligible, etc. You can select each one and say which of these risk levels that combination is. And then last but not least, at the bottom here, when it gives a likelihood, it just gives a short description as to what that likelihood description is. This just appears on the other sheet just to remind you with people when they're filling it in as to what that means. So you can put what you want in there. I'll come to that in a minute. So let's go back to RAID. So these drop down lists, because you said certain and moderate, it looks across the settings and it goes certain likelihood, moderate consequences. And because I've said we're using the initial, it goes certain, moderate is extreme. We're using the initial. So what this does here on the RAID is this column looks to the initial ones, pulls it out, says this is extreme. What is the mitigation? The initial is extreme. The mitigated one is low, so we can see that. But then what it does is it looks up those two. Because I've said use the initial one, it uses the extreme. It says because it's extreme, let's go back to settings. Because it's extreme, that must be done every 1 month. So what this does then is this asks for a review every single month. So it's in the green now because the day I'm shooting this is the 16th of June. It says the next review is the 16th of July. So it's a month away, so it's fine. When I start to get close to that date, and again, you can set that up in the settings, working days before the due date to show is due, I've said 10 days. So when you get to within 10 days of it, it flags up in yellow to go, this is almost due. And when you get beyond the date that is due, it turns red to say that it's overdue. So you don't see a due date, column saying due or overdue, but the colors represent it: green, well on track; amber, almost due; red, overdue. And these will change colors according to when your next review is done. So for these ones, for example, you see we're coming up to doing a review. Once you've done that review, you just simply override the last review with the new last review date, and then it will refresh that column again for the next one. These cells all change color based on the selection that you make, so that you can see at a glance what you're dealing with. If one of these is then closed, you close it off, it still keeps the colors in, but it just grays it out, saying that you're not actually using that. So you can see these ones are grayed out. There's no information showing on there because it's no longer active. Those are the 3 data entry sheets that you can fill in. The settings, we've discussed this, that set up the RAID settings. We've discussed these. What this one does here is when we get to the filter data, which I'm going to get to in a minute, this just shows you how to filter the data. So anything that's overdue, we want it to be at the top of the list. So I've given it a 6. The higher the rating, the higher up on the list it goes. I've given no actions a 5 because I want them next. I've given on track a 4 because I want them to appear next on the list. Then I want the not started, then I want the on hold, and then I want completed. So the higher the number here, this just ranks these different statuses on your filtered list, which I'll show you in a minute. And here, the bank holidays, you can read through this. You probably won't need to adjust this, but if a bank holiday changes, enter the bank holiday that's due to change. It'll get a little green tick here to say that it recognizes it, and the new bank holiday whenever that bank holiday is moving to. And if you've got any completely new bank holidays like that don't exist in the ones that it's calculated, you can fill them in here. To be honest with you, the bank holidays is just working out when the next thing's due. So it's not really the end of the world if you don't complete this, because it might just show you one of the dates is 1 day out. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But you can keep this up to date if you want to. The important part here is to actually tell it which 12-month period to be using. So the reason why I've set this in, if you leave this blank and you leave that blank, it will do a rolling 12 months. So it'll always start on the next, it'll always end on the month that you're currently in, and it'll do a rolling 12-month period. Alternatively, if you fill that in, it'll fill that in. The two purposes this serves is number one, on the dashboard, I've got some monthly graphs. These two monthly graphs here. This one was always from today onwards, but these two here will adjust based on your 12-month period. So you can set the 12-month period for these two graphs by setting that. The other thing that this does is it actually determines a bank holiday. So because I put in 2026, this will now calculate the bank holidays for 2026 and 2027. So if you leave this as like 2020, it's not going to calculate your current bank holiday. So you want to keep this somewhat up to date, or just clear those and leave it on as a rolling 12 months. So your settings are all set up. Your three tabs are filled in. Let's see what the spreadsheet actually does for you. Right, this is the filter tab. This is probably one of the most important tabs on the spreadsheet, because this will let you customize your report, your filter data, and, well, yeah, in this case, your filter data and the information that goes through to the staff tab. So there are three different kind of sections, as it were. It's almost like a grid, three different sections for the three different sheets. So this one in the middle of the dates, I'm guessing you probably won't use this too often, but for example, you may say, well, hold on, I just want to see new tasks. I want to see new project plan tasks, new meeting actions, and new raids that we've added in the last month. In which case, you can actually come here, and this section at the top lets you override all of them. So essentially, what you're going to see is what you see here in the green section, but you can override each one individually, or you can override them all together. So if I said, I just want to see what I've added in June. So if you said, for example, the 1st of June to the 30th of June, now you can see all three of them have changed for the identified date or the task added date, and they've all three changed from the 1st of June to the 30th of June. Now, if you were to come here and say, well, actually, these ones I want from the 1st of May, for example, you can override just this one with the 1st of May. You can see those two stay the same. So you can play around with these. This is if you want to kind of go, all the tasks have been added, or if you're saying, well, actually, I just want to see all the tasks that have been completed between the date range. But just bear in mind that all the other tasks wouldn't have a completed date. So this will only then bring through the completed date, completed entries. So you can adjust the date ranges on any three of these different tabs. Alternatively, on the left-hand side here, you can actually come and enter which statuses you want. So for example, here it's only including the overdue status. If I clear all of them, it ticks that box to go all options. This is including all statuses. You've got the same thing for the meeting actions and the project plan. You've got here, you can include, say, which status to do, but you can also include which risks to do. And remember, I said this, which risks is looking at, is it looking at the initial or the initial, the mitigated? This is according to the setting over here. So let's go back to the filter. So you can select which status, which risk, which statuses in order to include in all the three different lists. And then the filtered list, I'll show you what that filtered data is in a few minutes, but you can include whether to include this in the filtered data. So you can say, well, you just want project plan. And if you don't want the meeting actions included, you can just say no here, and it won't include them on that filtered data list. I'll show you that when we get there. And then you can also select up to 10 staff, up to 10 regions, up to 10 departments, up to 10 sites, up to 10 strategic pillars. You can select in this, and this will then only bring through rows that pass all of the filter sets. So all these filters are stacked one on top of the other. So if you said, for example, overdue, you can select overdue tasks that were entered in the last 2 months that so-and-so is responsible for in that region for that department. And you can select all of them, and it'll stack one on top of the other on top of the other. And then what will happen here is it'll tell you how many entries you have passing through. So for example, if I went here and said, well, the project plan, I only want overdue, you can see now that there's nothing overdue in the project plan. So you've got naught coming through from the project plan. If I come here and select not to include that, meeting actions, it says meeting actions 0. It's not going through to the filtered data list. So you can, if I said how many are on track, there we go, 65 and 65 going through the staff from the project plan. So you can filter these ones, and whatever you filter on these two sheets will affect the date, the filtered data, and those numbers on the staff sheet, which I'll show you both of them in a minute. All right, so this all affects the filtered data tab. Now, the filtered data tab, as we can see, they're showing in order, the priority order that I specified in the settings tab based on the higher numbers here. It also shows which list each one's on. So it'll either say the project plan or the meeting actions, and it tells me which row each of them's on as well. So you can just, if you want to find, for example, this particular task, you see that it's on row 25, the meeting actions, row 25. There we go. So, where is it? Filtered data. And then this pulls up either the action number or the site, depending on which of the lists it's on. So from the project plan, it'll be the site. From the meeting actions, it'll be the action number. Then the department, strategic pillar, there isn't any on this one. And then it gives you the improvement action plans, the owner, task added, all those different dates. It gives you the different dates, the task added, task started, expected, last action completed, further, etc. So it gives you all those different dates. It doesn't give you the on hold, but it will show it as on hold and grayed out if it is on hold. And then because I haven't given you a whole bunch of rows here, you can actually just toggle through the pages. So if you get to the bottom and you want to see what's next, you can come up the top here and it says row 1 of 3. You can just change it to 2, then it gives you page 2. And here you can see the on hold, and then we get down to the completed, and you can see page 3, and it'll give you the last completed ones. So you can toggle through that. And this only gives you the entries that have passed through those filters. So this is why the filter page is so important. So you can come there and go, actually, I only want to see the on track, and I only want to see the on track meeting. And then you can come back to the filtered list. Now it only shows the on track stuff. And actually, you can come back to the filters and say, well, I don't want to include meeting actions. I don't want that in the filtered data. And you can go to filter data. Now you can see it's only the project plan stuff. So you can filter, and it filters, it stacks the filters up and sends through. Here you can see how many rows of each have actually come through before. So you can check if there's no rows before you click going between the different tabs. So that doesn't only do this filter doesn't only filter for the filtered data, but also what it does is it also does for the staff. So here you can see how many for each status, for each list, for each staff. So your project plan, your meeting actions, and your age, you can see your overdue, etc. Overdue, action, no action, not started, and then overdue, due, up to date, and closed. So you can see how many of each come through. And these numbers are also done by the filter. Now, what I did do here was I've given you an override. So if you have set up this filter for your filter data and you come to this sheet and you go, actually, I don't want it to be a part of the filter, you can actually select it here. So you can say filter data only, which will then apply according to the filter. So if you went to, for example, and said, I only want to see on track, and then you went back to the staff, you'll see it only shows the ones that are on track. This one here, it's different because we didn't select that. Here you can say filter date, where was it? Filter. You can say I only want to see the ones that are up to date, for example. And then it only shows the ones that are up to date. But then if you are here and you say, well, I don't want the filter data, I want to see all data, you can actually just override it here and just say all data and it'll show everything. So you've got that override option as well, or you can go by the filtered data. You can play around with these filters. It's difficult to explain exactly what they do, but when you have a look at it, it should be straightforward to understand as to exactly what you filtered. Lastly, but not least, is the dashboard sheet. The dashboard has its own filter. It's free of the other filter, so the other filter doesn't affect the dashboard. What the dashboard does is it gives you a breakdown of project plan by status here, not only the overall count, but also per month based on the month of entry. Here you can see the same for the meeting actions. And here you can see the RAID, the risk alert, the different accounts by risk or by the status, the current status as far as when they need to be done. And here, this one starts in June and works its way forward. So when I say starts in June, it's because the video has been shot in June. So this one starts in the current month and always works forward. These ones are set as per your settings in your settings tab. But there is a filter applied to this. So if you do want to come here and you say, well, actually, I just want one particular region, or I just want to see one particular site, or I just want to see one particular department, you can actually come here and filter by region. And then these graphs, everything here changes for that particular region. And if you adjust filter by department, whatever, you can filter by department, you can change it and adjust it for each department. Yeah, the last thing is this one up here. These are just alerts and warnings that you have on the spreadsheet on the different tabs. So for example, if I went to the project plan and I added a new project, a new site, and I didn't fill this in, if you go back to the dashboard, it says that there are 5 yellow alerts, which is then telling you that there's stuff that needs to be filled in on that particular tab. So that will just give you an update there. This will give you some text telling you what the alerts are, if there are any alerts. I think these were duplicates on your locations tab. If you've got sites in more than one region or the same region, site department, etc., duplicated, then that will flag up over here. So you've got your dashboard, your 3 different sheets to keep track of all the different tasks and raids, your filter, which you can apply, which then filters the filter data and the values on the staff sheet if you've triggered it. This filter data based on that filter. You've got your locations that you can set up beforehand. You can add some more on afterwards if you need to. You've got your staff, same situation, and the settings tab, which I've gone through and explained. And then finally the dashboard, which is the overview. So I hope that helps. I know it's a little bit of a whirlwind tour of it, but hopefully that makes sense to you if you're using it. If this works for you, that's great. Use it by all means. If you're looking at this saying, well, it's great, it does kind of what you want, but you need more detail or more specific stuff, then do get in touch for a custom spreadsheet. But if this helps you, I wish you all the best and good luck with that. Thank you very much and goodbye.